So this Friday, we have Artur Beterbiev making the second defense of his unified WBC and IBF light heavyweight titles against Marcus Browne in a fight that I think is a decent stylistic matchup, and it's certainly a fight that's flown under the radar. Artur Beterbiev is a fighter that I've been quite familiar with for the past few years. I first saw him in 2015 against Campillo, and he mashed Campillo up. That fight, I felt bad for Campillo in that fight because he was shipping some heavy punishment, and the way he got stopped, that was brutal stuff. I'm sure most of you have seen it. And it was clear to see that Artur Beterbiev was a fighter with a lot of ability. The offensive prowess was really something to behold. But he's had a considerable issue with inactivity in his career. And you can see it when you look at his record, because he turned pro in 2013. But in this 8 years, he's only had 16 fights. That equates to only 2 fights a year. And though it does need to be said that when he first started off, he was fighting a decent level of opposition, certainly higher than the opposition that most prospects fight when they turn pro. But it was obvious because it was clear that he was no typical prospect. This is someone who was a very special talent. And despite the spells of inactivity throughout his career, Beterbiev is always in good shape. And I think most people know by now what this guy is. He is just a Chechen fighting machine. He has freakish strength and power, but he also has some good schooling, which is quite common amongst Russian Olympians. Marcus Browne, on the other hand, was also a high-level amateur and Olympian, though I would argue that Beterbiev is just a bit more offensively dynamic than Browne. And when you watch Beterbiev, you'll see that I think he makes better use of the lead hand, uses subtle feints, and he can cut off the ring quite effectively. Defensively, however, Beterbiev is lacking and leaves quite a bit to be desired. He will often just resort to stepping back from punches or sometimes leaning back, which isn't a good move. You get yourself out of position, you can't really come back effectively or anything. And if your opponent doubles up, you're kind of out in no man's land. Browne, he also relies primarily on his feet for defense, but he does so with a bit more quickness, and I feel like this kind of gives him a defensive edge. And when I watch Browne, I see his greatest strength being his athleticism. The way he moves around the ring, he's quite explosive, he's quite agile, got a lot of speed, balance and dexterity, which is very impressive in period. But when you consider that Marcus Browne is on the taller side for a light heavyweight, I believe he's like 6'2", it does make it even more impressive. But he can move around the ring well, and you can see the athleticism. But when I've watched Browne, I've always felt like something's missing. And I just feel like technically, he doesn't have the technique, he doesn't have the biomechanics of a true puncher. I feel like this is reflected in his record as well. I believe it's like 24 wins and like 16 of them are by knockout. So look, you don't want to leave your chin out there to dry in front of him, because he'll tag you, but he's not a puncher like some of these light heavyweights are. But he's a good athlete, so he's got some snap to him, got some explosiveness to him. But also when you look at his technique and his IQ, Browne doesn't really do a lot in front of his opponents. And there's often periods where he'll just throw the lead hand out, and he doesn't really have ways of setting his punches up that effectively. He's someone who likes to wait and counter, which, look, I understand that can be effective, and you can be a very successful fighter of a strategy like that and a style like that. But if you listen to the commentary of the Marcus Browne John Pascal fight, Lennox Lewis says you can see that Marcus Browne, I'm paraphrasing, but you can see Marcus Browne is waiting for Pascal to make a mistake or make a move, and so he can counter. As I say, you can have success doing that, but let's think back to the old saying from Mike McCallum. A good fighter capitalizes on your mistakes. A great fighter makes you make mistakes. I don't really see Marcus Browne make his opponent make mistakes. So he's not that great fighter level. He's a good fighter. You know, he's a serviceable fighter. And so, for that reason, he just has this basic offense. You know, he'll use the jabs, he'll wait for his opponent to attack him in counter, but I don't think it's good enough. Maybe he proves me wrong. Maybe his athleticism and that style is enough to get him through, but I just don't think so. When matched up with Beterbiev, who has the defensive shortcomings that I've mentioned, combined with Marcus Browne's athletic ability, I can see him maybe catching Beterbiev, probably buzzing him, maybe even knocking him down. But I just think in the long run, Browne's offense is just too basic, and I don't think he's going to have enough to keep Beterbiev off him, keep Beterbiev honest, and damage him and intimidate him enough to get enough space to kind of go the distance and get some considerable work done. And so, even though I see Browne maybe knocking Beterbiev down, Beterbiev touching the canvas, I think the relentlessness of Beterbiev and the power and the strength, because Beterbiev sets up his punches once he gets into a fight, but he's no stranger to just trudging forward and sticking it on you and just trying to punch you any way he can, because this is someone who, I think regardless of the punch he throws, it will hurt and it's got force behind it. And I think Marcus Browne will I just think he's going to ship too much punishment, and I can see Beterbiev stopping him in, I want to say, the 10th round. I don't think he'll completely iron out Marcus Browne, but I feel like Marcus Browne will be shipping a lot of punishment, and the referee will either jump in or Browne's corner will throw the towel in. So, not the greatest pre-fight analysis and prediction, but I'm fairly confident that Beterbiev wins this fight in the 10th round by stoppage. Either referee jumps in or Marcus Browne's corner calls a halt to the action. So, that is my opinion on this fight. Let me know what you think. Do you agree, disagree? What is your take? Who are you picking? Leave it down below and I'll get back to you. If you can like, comment, share, subscribe, much appreciated. Thanks for listening, and I'll catch you in the next video.